Go ahead and let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome. My name is Susan Morgan. I am a horticulturist and therapeutic horticulture practitioner based in the Denver, Colorado area. And welcome to the Florida Horticulture for Health Network virtual free webinar. We are very excited to host Erin Lovely today. And a few comments before we get started. We invite you to check out the Florida Horticulture for Health Network website and social media platforms. They're listed right here on the screen in front of you, especially because we have some additional upcoming webinars, which will be posted very soon, including starting tomorrow, about some upcoming webinars that we have coming up very soon, including Making Plant Sales Successful, which is a virtual panel discussion hosted on Tuesday, March 28th at 12 o'clock Eastern time. So I hope that you'll be able to join us for that. Event registration information will be posted on Facebook tomorrow for that event. Also, our committee has been working recently on updating the resource hub on our website, which is a free resource for you that you can find research citations and links to university, extension, and industry videos and publications on a variety of horticulture for health topics. So we are excited for all of the work that we've been doing. It's being ongoing updated. So please check that out. Again, that's on our website that is listed there in front of you. A few housekeeping things. We are recording this video, but we are working out currently whether or not this will be posted on the FLHHN YouTube channel. But you should be getting something or some kind of notification later on if this video will be posted. So stay tuned for that. Also, during this presentation, as a respect to our presenter and other participants in our Zoom call today, we ask that you stay muted during the entire presentation. And then also we will hopefully open it up for questions at the end of the presentation. So please save your comments and questions for the chat box for when you're prompted to do that at the end of Erin's presentation today. So on behalf of the Florida Horticulture for Health Network, I'm honored to introduce our presenter, Erin Lovely, CTRS and horticultural therapist. I saw Erin actually discuss her horticultural therapy work at Craig Hospital at a meeting of the Rocky Mountain Horticultural Therapy Network last year, and really wanted to have her with the Florida Horticulture for Health Network so that she could share her work with you. And so very excited to introduce Erin. Erin is passionate about educating and supporting healthy lifestyles and identity development through horticulture and providing the opportunity to receive the many benefits from plants, including physical and mental well-being, a sense of purpose, or maybe just calmness. She is a certified therapeutic recreation specialist with a certificate in horticultural therapy. For the past 18 years, she has worked in hospitals, schools, and community programs and is thrilled to be a part of Craig Hospital, which is located in Denver, Colorado. So I'm going to stop sharing this and we're going to transition over to Erin's presentation.
Great. Thank you, Susan.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, and I have some exciting news. I just put in my application for professional registration for registered horticultural therapist. Yay! Finished my classes, so it's exciting news. Okay, so I just wanted to share a little bit about how horticulture fits into neurorehabilitation and sort of the program and the sense of culture that we have here at Craig Hospital. This picture here is our North Garden or our therapy garden in the springtime. So I want to say late April. This garden is very seasonal and we really try to highlight and exaggerate the different seasons in this garden. I think it really gives a sense of kind of orientation. It helps people realize like the world's going on outside of the hospital. Okay. Oh. There we go. Okay. A little bit about Craig Hospital. So we are a private nonprofit neurorehabilitation and research hospital. We have a very large research for clinical research here that we do. We specialize in the treatment of adults with spinal cord and brain injury, typically ages about 16 and up. We do unfortunately have the rise of a teen population coming into the hospital. We average about 85 inpatients at a time. And we have a very large outpatient program with lots of services. We are very fortunate to have we have 3 inpatient brain injury teams, and we have 3 inpatient spinal cord injury teams. And each team consists of a physician, a main physician, a neuropsychologist, and then a team of occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech pathologists, respiratory therapists, and recreation therapists. So each team has a recreation therapist on their team. And so every patient coming in will receive some kind of recreation therapy. And then if appropriate, they're referred for horticulture as well. Why do people come to Craig Hospital? I think this is important to know. Unfortunately, really can happen to any of us at any moment. But the largest reason for brain injury and spinal cord injury is motor vehicle accidents. So that's that MVA, about 50%, and it feels like that just keeps going up. We do get lots of falls, and it could be work-related falls from different types of work, whether it's even just putting up Christmas lights, whatever it may be. Sports injuries, so lots of backcountry kind of outdoor sports, and it's kind of seasonal. So about this time of year in the next month, we might see a lot of skiing and snowboarding accidents. Kind of in the fall, we see a lot of mountain bike accidents or horseback riding accidents. So kind of seasonal around that. We do get cases of violence. And then people are here for miscellaneous reasons, any kind of neuromuscular disease. That's kind of random. So things like Guillain-Barré, if they've had a virus and now have Guillain-Barré, which is the body sort of attacking its immune system. West Nile virus, we do unfortunately have West Nile virus here in Colorado, and we do see patients for that as well. And the other thing that's not up here that I want to mention is for brain injury, a large component of our brain injury population is from strokes. So here's kind of the split between spinal cord and brain injury. I think we are usually heavier on brain injury, and I almost want to say today we're probably closer to 55% brain injury. And then we see patients from all over the US, including Mexico and Canada, and sometimes in Europe as well. So horticultural therapy here at Craig Hospital. Here's another picture of our North Garden or therapy garden. I believe this picture was taken in August. Again, really trying to exaggerate the different seasons. So lots of annuals and bright colors here in the garden in the summer. And we try to host a variety of plants, some that are obviously really great for our environment. It's tough to garden in Colorado, if anyone's familiar with it. We have extreme seasons and it's very dry. So we have a lot of water-wise plants here, but we also try to provide plants that are familiar with our patients because we do get patients from all over the United States. So we do have some traditional annuals that we try to implement into the garden every year. So Craig's HT program is what I'll call it here. Uses plants and plant-related activities to improve the physical, cognitive, and psychosocial well-being of our patients. It's a spectrum of interventions. We try to promote independence, purpose, and sensory efficiency. This may include fine motor skills and coordination, upper extremity range of motion, orientation and mobility, motor planning, visual and auditory scanning, compensatory skills and strategies. Again, that sensory efficiency, which is huge. We just really try to regulate our bodies. And of course, that social and emotional well-being. Gardening tasks can be very motivating due to that sense of purpose. Gardening helps greatly with the orientations to the seasons and the weather, as I mentioned earlier. And it aids in teaching the orientation ability and concepts of body awareness, and is a sensory-rich experience that provides input to all the senses. As we all know here, and that's probably why we're here, plants increase the oxygen around us, which reduces our blood pressure and our heart rate and provides a sense of calmness. So I want to just mention that we are very fortunate to have a large foundation or a development team. So the horticultural therapy program is a complementary integrative therapy. I do not have to bill for services here, which is a great thing. We have a lot of programs here at Craig Hospital that are founded through outside sources. The horticultural therapy program has been in existence since 1982. I think that's pretty phenomenal. They saw the benefits of the program right away and grabbed onto it. So the program's really grown since then, and now it's a full-time position here, and my caseload is typically 20 patients or more at a time, just inpatient based, and then I also see outpatients and alumni and grads as well. We sort of focus on these outcome areas and then build objectives based on that, depending on the patient's needs and interests. So as you can see here, the first one is that return to gardening piece. So really working on the education and resources for accessibility and adaptive equipment, the environment setup, and focusing on the safety, access, and energy conservation. So we get a lot of patients that are avid gardeners and they want to get back to that when they get home. So we just try to provide resources for that. The next one is kind of those functional goals. So whether it's for physical or cognitive functioning, and then we try to relate that to plant healthcare task completion. So really looking at that physical and cognitive functioning, communication, attention, focus, memory, mobility, and of course that independence piece. And then lastly, the wellness and well-being. I think I incorporate some kind of wellness goal for all of our patients. Unfortunate for us, the plants do all the heavy lifting. So if I can connect them with the plants, usually that's a great avenue from there. But we do provide a lot of mindfulness garden tasks, whether it's inside or outdoors, sensory observations, or whether it's just caring for a plant from seed to transplant and providing that kind of well-being around that. And then lastly, the horticulture, that should say horticulture, not horticultural, horticulture education piece. So if oftentimes I'll pepper that in to every session that we have, but some patients really want to know more about certain types of horticulture tasks or plants or whatever it is. So that may be a goal for them as well. Some of our treatment spaces. This is our indoor greenhouse, and as you can see here, it's not an actual functioning greenhouse. We just call that here because people know where it's located and where the plants are. It is 320 square feet of a green room. It does have some supplemental lighting that provides opportunity to grow and maintain assorted indoor tropicals, succulent, and cacti. It has multiple accessible features. So the table here in this picture in the middle, our workspace, the table can actually move up and down. So it fits all wheelchair heights, whether it's a manual chair with a petite lady all the way up to a power chair with maybe a larger gentleman. So that's been a really nice component. And then the picture of the drawer here with the soil, it just kind of pulls out. And so patients can access underneath the drawer and then access the soil as much as possible. And then we also feature a range of modified gardening tools and equipment in this room as well. Here's some more pictures of our room. So lots of propagation goes on in here, whether it's seed starting or vegetative propagation. Even fun when patients can go down the rabbit hole with me. We might do some grafting or air layering or something like that. And we'll do little science experiments. The picture with the seedlings, every year we grow vegetables to seedlings to donate out to local food bank pantry gardens. And last year we were fortunate to have some very healthy pepper and basil plants, and we donated 127 seedlings that patients actually help plant and maintain during their stay here to go out. And then the indoor space, again, just offers an opportunity to do sessions year round. Here's some of our outdoor treatment spaces, and it's beyond treatment spaces. This is our green spaces. This is a part of our culture here on campus. So the picture on the left, or if anyone's a skier in the audience, the skier's right, is our therapy garden. And this picture here kind of highlights a piece of the garden where it's nice and shady. There's some great seating, really aids for respite and recovery and resilience for our patients, caregivers, and our staff. The middle picture kind of highlights our education garden. So really providing education resources for those accessibility features. And the patients really come in and help work in the garden in these areas. More of maybe a production garden, so growing some vegetables and herbs along with annuals as well. And then the last picture there is our butterfly or our pollinator garden. And this is a little pocket garden that we have that a lot of the patient rooms can look out on top of and have a nice view of. So a little bit more about our therapy garden or our north garden. As you can see, it's 8,400 square feet, and the north garden contains many therapy elements. And so we have raised planter beds, various types and heights of the planter beds. We have concrete, no one's going home with concrete raised beds. So we provide a lot of education about what else you can build raised beds with. There's containers as well, so great for small space gardens. And excuse me just for a second. We have a variety of garden path surfaces. And so again, not all concrete. That can be really invasive for people to want to go home and then pour concrete all over the place. So looking at different types of compacted surfaces, whether it's crusher fines or maybe truck decks, something of that sort. Then we have a range of seating areas that's both in the sun and the shade. And each seating area actually has electrical outlets that really aids to the all-inclusivity of the garden. And so if we have patients on ventilators, they can come out and plug their ventilator into the outlet and be able to sit in the garden. But also I think of it as if there's a caregiver waiting for their loved one to be done with surgery, they can, and their phone's about to die, they can still sit outside and wait for the phone call. Staff can bring their computers and work outside as well. So I really like that aspect of it. We have a really rich sensory plant palette, again, highlighting all the seasons. We have plant identification tags. So if individuals are interested in what types of plants they're looking at, so that education component. We have water features and bird feeders. We have wind and art sculptures. So those are a few of the elements for the therapy garden. The next green space that I haven't mentioned yet is our Plaza Garden. Let's see, and this was built in 2011, and Craig sought the permission from the city of Inglewood to close a street. So I'm going to try to explain this picture a little bit. This photograph was taken from our west building looking down. So Craig Hospital consists of two buildings, and this kind of green space runs in between it. And you'll notice there's a couple of bridges that connect the two buildings together. And prior to 2011, there was a street that was open to the public that would drive underneath there. So imagine patients trying to cross that street to get from one building to the other. And so we got permission from the city. We're technically in Inglewood, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver, to close this off and turn it into a green space. You can see it's a little bit different feeling than the therapy garden. The hardscape to landscape ratio is a little different. We're probably closer on the 70% side of the hardscaping to landscaping. But actually, this has been really great for our patients. The access into this garden is right there. So they can come out of their rooms at the end of the day after their therapy day and just sprawl out all over this place. And it becomes sort of like a happy hour garden. People come out and sit and socialize. So the extra hardscaping has been really nice. The plantings are perennial, kind of water-wise plantings, and then we have a beautiful water feature here when it's turned on in the summer is really gorgeous. All right, so a little bit more about the interventions that we provide in our horticultural therapy program. So for spinal cord injury, we're really working on that fine and gross motor skills, independence and ownership over the garden tasks that they do, to really become a participant in their everyday life. So working on those compensatory strategies, and as I mentioned, a lot of people have landscape chores. If they own homes, they want to be able to get back to raking leaves or shoveling snow. So how is that going to look for them? And then again, that wellness piece as well. So some of the adaptive equipment, I'm going to go back real quick. Some of these pictures here, so there's a gentleman using some long reach pruners, which have been on the market for a while. Thanks, Japanese. They've been great. Many of you probably use them. And then the picture above is a wax tip pen, and this has been a game changer. I was kind of brainstorming with a patient's daughter about 6 months after I started this job, and I realized I could get patients that have limited upper extremity functioning about 75% of the way to plant seeds, but they still needed some support, whether it was using a funnel or whatever it was. They just needed that last 25% assistance from someone other than themselves. And so she mentioned, hey, I do my nails with these wax tip pens. So we tried it out, and it is amazing to plant seeds. And so if you have really good eyesight, on the very end of the pink wax, there's a basil seed on there. So this gentleman was able to plant basil seeds from start to finish with an environment set up, but on his own. So put one of these in your tool bucket if you don't have one. And they're like $1. So it's really great. So we do focus a lot on that adaptive equipment side, especially for spinal cord injury or patients with spinal cord injury. We identify the tools that enable the patients to perform various gardening tasks, and we focus on those modifications that are necessary for patients to return to their home gardens. And we put a big emphasis on not going out and purchasing all new tools. We take a look and ask them, what are your favorite tools to use, and how can we modify those tools? So whether it's taking, a regular size shovel or a rake, maybe cutting a few feet off the end so it's easier to hold from a seated position, maybe changing out the head of it so it's not so heavy, and just being really creative with materials that they can purchase from their local hardware store. The accessibility education piece, we really focus again on that safety. So getting into the garden and being safe, the access into it, and energy conservation. We really talk about a variety of pathway surfaces and terrains. I think that's a really big one that people tend to forget about. Sure, you can put your raised beds in, but if it's in the back of your yard and you have to go over turf to get to it, and you use a power chair, it's really tough to get back over there. So looking at maybe changing the location of your garden so it's easier access, and then potentially changing the terrain to access those gardens. We talk a lot about space-saving techniques. Many of our patients may end up moving into a smaller home or a place with decreased outdoor space, and so how can we still grow the most bang for your buck in a small area? So maybe doing some education on square foot gardening or vertical gardening, something like that. A big one is that tool storage. So where are you going to store your tools? And this ties into that transition and environment setup. And how can we conserve energy? So if you use a wheelchair going back and forth between where your tools are stored and then where you're going to be gardening, that can be a big energy use. And so can we set up different areas and strategies throughout your garden space for energy conservation? Okay, so a little bit about brain injury and the interventions that we use there. So again, we use those plant-related tasks to support all of these things here that we have. And again, it's really just to help create structure and routine in everyday life for our patients to become participants in their everyday life and creating ownership. So we have a really heavy emphasis here at Craig Hospital for safe discharge and teaching patients and their caregivers to how to care for their cares when they get home. So they're kind of their activities of daily living. But I want to just expand that just a little bit with the horticulture program. And how can they then be a participant in the household for everyone else? So not just maybe caring for their own needs, but having that sense of purpose for the rest of the family. So can we set it up that with a little bit of supports or strategies, can they water the plants twice a week? Can they fill up the bird feeders? However that may look for their setup, and then potentially the carryover of that. So now are there other chores or ways that they can participate as a family member and to contribute in other areas? So can they empty the dishwasher or things like that? So just kind of adding to that. And I think providing that sense of purpose is really what increases our wellness. And once we have that, then it's like, okay, then I can go out and maybe garden because I enjoy it. But first I want to contribute. So that's a big component. A little bit about these pictures here. We see a range of patients here. So the top picture is an individual with a brain injury that's considered what's called disorders of consciousness. So his alert state is pretty minimal and his responses are pretty minimal. So we provide a lot of sensory input, and of course, using plants is a great way to do that. All the way to the lady, the picture at the bottom. You can see she's pretty functional. She's walking. Looks like maybe some balance issues still, but she's doing a lot more outdoor gardening tasks. With brain injury, we can create what's called a horticulture workstation. And so the horticultural therapist, so myself, I'll team up with the patient's occupational therapist to evaluate the job readiness skills. So it's sort of a vocational type intervention. And this usually occurs closer to the time of the patient's discharge, but we're really looking at that independence piece, the safety and the efficiency of completing these tasks. So whether they're even interested in horticulture or not, it's a great avenue to get someone maybe outside to perform sort of job task duties. So it might even be picking up trash around campus or watering plants or whatever it is. And then we'll track the time that it takes each week for them to do it. And if they're decreasing any aids or supports along the way to increase that independence. Now we're going to switch gears just a little bit. I want to talk about how we provide some services for outpatients and alumni. So the GIVE initiative here at Craig Hospital, it's a hospital-wide shared initiative that provides supported volunteer frameworks to patients in various phases of their recovery. So as you can see here, it really enhances the physical, social, and emotional well-being of volunteerism after injury. So whether they're returning to work or not, we have just found a strong body of evidence that this helps people feel more connected and gives them a sense of purpose when they volunteer in their community. And so me being an advocate for volunteerism, because I volunteer myself a lot, I said, well, we can do that in a green industry really easily. So we jumped on the opportunity and we partnered with Denver Botanic Gardens. So we now have had 2 summers of kind of this pilot program where we have outpatients, typically with brain injury, come and become volunteers at the Denver Botanic Gardens. So they go through the full process and become legit volunteers with them. I come and support kind of the accessibility piece behind it. But we do work with Angie Andrade. She's a registered horticultural therapist there and the associate director of therapeutic horticulture. She's been there, I think, for over 17 years. So we work together to create this program. So it is seasonal. Again, it's 18 weeks. So the volunteers show up 1 day a week for about 3 hours. And they help with correlated task healthcare plan. Sorry, I can't talk today. They help with correlated plant healthcare tasks. And so this may be, and we work in the sensory garden. And so they come in, we kind of get a system going. They come in and they water the plants. They clear pathways. This is typically on a Monday or Tuesday after the weekend. So they might organize some furniture, they pick up debris and trash. We do plantings with seasonal plantings, prepping soil, amending soil, fertilizing plants, deadheading, pruning, just working outside for 3 hours. It can be a big one. Different tool use, leaf blowers, and then navigating the hose and the pulley system with different things. So really working on that vocational piece while volunteering at the Denver Botanic Gardens, which is a really prized outdoor green space. So we have a lot of pride and value in that. The interns also attend different horticulture lectures with Denver Botanic Garden horticulturists. So this summer we got to speak with the bonsai specialist, the succulent and cacti specialist. We do mindfulness walks with Angie or sensory observations. But overall, they just come in and have so much pride taking care of the space and interacting with the public and answering their questions. It's been a really amazing program. So I wanted to share a video now, and I think we're going to have, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then Jessica, if you want to pull up the other video real quick. I was having issues with my. Okay, I'm not getting any volume.
Can you hear it?
Not yet. I thought we had this figured out. That's okay. If not.
Right. Let me try again.
Ooh, that's a great little. No sound yet.
Would you like to narrate it the best you can?
Yeah, I mean, and what, excuse me, what we'll do is we'll just send out the link for this video on YouTube that you all can watch. It's really beautiful. This video is and interviews were taken for our first summer, so in 2021, with 2 of our patients that have brain injury.
I'll send it out later to participants.
Okay. Do you guys hear it?
No.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. It is a gorgeous little thing, but it just kind of highlights some of the evidence that we collected through observation from the patients and the caregivers and all the benefits that they received over the summer. So. Okay, so here's another picture of the other gentleman that was in this program. And here's a little story about this guy here. He didn't know much about horticulture or gardening at all. And he is not returning to work after his injury. His impairments were significant enough, but he loved to work. That was his life. And so when he had the opportunity to put on his volunteer shirt and his badge, you know, he'd tell his spouse, I'm going to work today. And he was just so proud. And he'd come in and, you know, I'd try to chat with him and have small talk in the morning and say, hey, you know, how was your weekend? And he's like, get out of here. I'm ready to work. And he'd just get to it and have so much pride. They reported some significant benefits with just his overall endurance and physical health, from the smallest things. So even going grocery shopping at Costco, he used to ride in the little scooters and push it around. And by the end of the summer, he was walking and pushing the cart around. He usually uses a walking stick or a walking cane. And after about 6 weeks in, he would come in and park his cane somewhere and didn't use it throughout the entire gardens. They noticed that they were taking more walks throughout the week after starting this and just spending more time outside. So that's some of the small little benefits that we saw. We are using some different outcome measures for this. And so the flourishing scale is a brief 8-item summary measure of the respondent's self-perceived success in important areas such as relationships, self-esteem, purpose, and optimism. The scale provides a single psychological well-being score. The SPAIN is a scale of positive and negative experience, and it's a 12-item questionnaire that evaluates how often a person experiences 6 positive and 6 negative feelings using a Likert scale. We did organizational surveys with both Craig Hospital from our standpoint and with Angie at the Denver Botanic Gardens, and then a participant survey as well. And that's where we got a lot of that observational or benefits information from that. This was our this last summer, so in 2022, here was 2 of our 3 kind of interns is what we'd call them throughout the summer. We did have an individual with a spinal cord injury join us for this program this summer, a little bit shorter, and he was really high level, and so he'd work pretty much independently. Angie would meet him at the beginning of a shift, tell him what needs to be done, and then he'd get it done. And I think since then he has returned to work, so it's been a success for him there. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of these pictures here. So the May 29th picture, this was the day we just finished planting this vertical wall in the sensory garden behind them. And you can kind of see they seem excited, but a little timid, the 2 gentlemen here. And then in September of 2022, you can see how much the wall has grown behind them, but also the 2 interns. So I just feel like they stand up taller, their chests are kind of puffed out, they have a nice glow from the sun, just a little more genuine, and pride kind of shows through this picture. We do plan on doing this hopefully again this summer, so a great avenue for kind of vocational piece there. So now I want to just dive into the garden culture real quick that we have. So the gardens and green spaces at Craig Hospital are a huge part of our culture. The gardens provide a space to ponder, gather, and provide natural treatment spaces. This is seen by patients that come out to socialize and connect with other patients, to staff that come out regularly to meditate, or caregivers that come out just to sit and perhaps grieve. All these practices help our community build resilience by allowing silence, connection with nature, and using all of our senses to refuel our buckets. Being in nature or the act of gardening is one of the best forms of practicing mindfulness. We get out of our brains and we're just present with the plants in the moment, and the plants don't budge. Families are always welcome and are encouraged to participate in the activities that we have here. So other than just doing one-on-one treatment sessions with patients, we also offer a variety of horticulture groups. And we also have a horticulture and reflection group that we do with caregivers as well. And that's been a huge success so far. We're looking forward to growing that program. Again, at the bottom there, I want to just highlight kind of that sunshine hour or the happy hour. So at the day's end after a therapy day, the hospital just, everybody exits when it's a nice day and everybody's sitting outside, just really getting in the sun and the green spaces. Here was an employee survey that was, I think, administered last spring. I want to say April or May. I just thought this was really fun, and so I geeked out on it. But where's your favorite area in Craig to relax or be inspired. A garden won by a landslide. So this was taken by all the employees. So I thought that was kind of neat. And the garden here, we just try to welcome visitors year round. So whatever season it is, we encourage our patients and families to get into those gardens and be with nature year round. Okay, that's all that I had. Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, Erin. That was wonderful. I really appreciated your tip on the wax tip pen. I was looking that up while you were talking, and
Who knew?
Yeah, that's really cool. It's available online for sale, and I think in craft stores too. Also, we have a few questions in the chat box. If you have additional questions that you haven't already posted in the chat box, please go ahead and do that. I wanted to share. The first question was from Kay. She asked, can you cover an example of a treatment plan for a patient who's had a stroke?
Sure. So just trying to think, it's a broad word, treatment plan. So I guess kind of how we do it is we start with a kind of an intake with the patient and the family. And we really focus on if they had interest in gardening or horticulture prior to their injury. And if not, that's okay. Sometimes we just might find that being in a green space is just really motivating for patients. And then we look at what their kind of functional or cognitive goals are from there. So I dive deep into what is their speech goals. Often with stroke, there's a lot of communication needs there. So trying to support that, memory, whether there's like a right or left side, perhaps paralysis and neglect. So really working on that and some bilateral tasks. And so I do a lot of strategy kind of set up in a treatment session with them based on what their objectives are and what we develop for those objectives. So I put less emphasis on the activity and more on the means to. So really focusing on that communication piece. And so I have patients often now replicate activities from session after session, especially with brain injury, to help build that self-confidence and that independence. So it might be where we might do a simple vegetative propagation. The first time round, we might really focus on simplifying all the steps in that task to 3. And we might use different forms of communication for this individual to follow. And then the week after, maybe we'll make it 5 tasks or add the component of, can they help set up the activity? And then the week after, we might add the component of 7 tasks or steps within propagation, and maybe then add in, can they help clean up the activity? So really helping them get that full idea of what it takes for the full completion to replicate it at home, so that we can avoid that, what I call fairy godmother syndrome, where you come in, the activity's set up, you do the activity, and then you leave. And then, you get home and you're like, oh, well, how am I going to access the cabinets and things like that? We use a lot of different communication stuff like that, setting up their environment. So if they have a left or right side neglect, we might put stuff on one or the other side to really make them look and turn in that direction and access that side of their body. We incorporate hand use and upper extremity use as much as possible, even if it's just passive movements with full support from myself, or if I'm co-treating with speech or occupational therapy. We just believe that having your 2 hands together, whether maybe one's passive or not, really provides a lot of connection in the brain and input. I hope that answers your question with a treatment plan. So yeah, it just really varies.
Dependent on the goals for the patient that you're working with. And it sounded like that was one-on-one work that you're doing. Okay. Another question we had was from Abby. She asked, what is the ratio of individual to group programs you run?
Yeah, much higher in individual. So as I mentioned, I typically have a caseload of about 20. And I try to see everyone once a week. The summer is a little different with that Denver Botanic Garden volunteer internship that we do that takes up quite a bit of my time. But I run 2, what I would say more social horticulture groups a month where anyone can sign up and come down. And I try to make that less about therapy and really just building connections and relationships between patients with a common activity. And then we run, and then I work weekends as well. So we may do some groups on weekends. Sometimes those are more intentional or functional groups. So I might have one geared just for brain injury or one geared just for spinal cord injury. Or sometimes they're open to everyone and they're kind of horticulture education classes. And then we run the caregiver group as well. So much higher ratio on individual sessions and groups.
Thank you. The next question is from Sylvia. And I think this was shortly after you were describing how you did the research with the Denver Botanic Garden program. So it's referencing that. Can you please provide examples, sources of tools you cited for measuring outcome data? Like the Spain and...
Yeah. So did that question get answered already?
I did. Sylvia, did that answer your question? Those are readily available outcome measuring tools.
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to,
Okay.
Go ahead.
can you hear me? I just wanted to know where I could look at what a Spain see what a Spain looks like. I've never seen that before.
Let's see. I mean, since we're a huge hospital, we have access to all this stuff. But I would imagine if maybe you tried to Google it, or if you have access to a research library, or if you're a part of like a university, you might have access to it. I don't know if it's just free to use or if you need to purchase it. I'm not sure. I guess I could try to find that out, but it might just be as simple as a quick Google search for that. Sylvia, does that answer your question? I know it's not probably exactly what you want to hear, but.
No, I'm looking for ways to track really simple data for the clients that I'm working with, the groups that I'm working with. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to decide what is the best form to do that with.
Okay. What I guess I would start with is what's the outcome data that you're trying to gather, and then pick a measurement from there. So if it is sort of that well-being and the psychosocial well-being, then the Spain and the flourishing scale are really great, but they focus more on that side versus maybe cognitive or physical functioning.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for your question, Sylvia. To tag on to that before we get to the next question, do you plan to publish your studies? I know you had the Denver Botanic Garden research that you had done with your volunteer program, but also with you had a survey. I don't know if it was an informal survey with your staff, the Craig Hospital staff, about their experience of the garden spaces.
Oh, no, no. I mean, I slowly just am always trying to collect data for program improvement, but I'm not looking to publish anything. And the GIVE initiative, there's already a huge body of evidence that volunteering after injury is really great for our social and well-being. So that it's already been proven. So we don't necessarily have to prove that again. We're just adding on kind of that. And I don't think it's a new thing, sort of that green volunteering, is that what it's called? So volunteering in a green space and getting the benefits of that. So we're mostly just, tracking data for program improvement, but also just to show the participants the progress that they've made throughout the summer. And then in regards to the employee survey, that was actually just a fun thing. I think that our human resources department, they do that once a month they'll have like a fun employee question, and that just happened to be the one. And I was like, oh, I got to get an image of that because that's cool.
Yeah, it's just interesting to learn that and to see what the experience through the lens of the clients that you're working with is really important to see that. So thank you for that. We have a question from Lisa. Lisa asks, for patients in a vegetative state, do you teach the caregivers how to use essential oils or other plants at all to enliven the brain?
Yeah, so we call that disorders of consciousness. There's different stages of that. And no, I don't do a lot on, excuse me, a huge component on the aromatherapy side. The physicians here, and it depends on the smells, some of them actually can have counteractive symptoms to some of the medications into their brain. And so we're not super specific on what we use, but not necessarily about aromatherapy particular. So I'm not really using aromatherapy as the end all thing, but I use it as that means to. And so whether it's using smells or textures, so providing whether it's olfactory, auditory, tactile input into our patients and using those natural materials. So it could be scratchy natural materials, we're providing input, but what we're really looking for is just responses, and then to use it as a form of communication into the world. So we're really looking for a response, and then is the response a preference or a non-preference? And so we'll look at facial features or different nonverbal responses, and then we can let families know, hey, right now they're preferring these things and not these things. And so then maybe it's a way for the family to interact with these patients outside of just caregiving. So if we say, hey, we've noticed they like, joint compressions or really deep hand massages and the smell of lemon, then, we can pass that on to the family to let them know that it's a way to interact with them. But we'll do a lot of validation with that as well. So if someone experiencing disorders of consciousness, I might put up, and I don't know, I often will do even if I know they do, don't like a smell, I'll put it up there just to validate that continuously. Okay, you're still telling me you don't like this smell. And so it validates that communication. So if, they get kind of an eyebrow like this, or their teeth grunt, or, you see them kind of arch their back, depending on their alert state, then it's like, okay, I see your eyebrows, came down. You're telling me you don't like that. Or I see your nostrils flaring many times. I see you smelling it. You're telling me you want to smell it some more. So I just really use it as a form on a way of communication for preferences and not preferences. So less about the aromatherapy piece, but just that sensory integration piece.
Thank you. Yeah, Lisa says, thank you for that input. It's very helpful. And Abby also says, thanks for your presentation. She's especially likes your collaboration with the Denver Botanic Garden. And
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll admit, it's probably my most favorite part of my job. It's been amazing. So yeah.
Good. If you have any additional questions, we have about 5 more minutes in the allotted time today, so you can write that into the chat box. I had one additional question from your presentation. You talked about when in the outdoor garden spaces at Craig that tool storage is really important. I may have missed, do you have an outdoor tool storage area, or is that stored indoors? And that's part of the getting to the outdoors is strategizing indoors what tools you need to take with you and then figuring out a way to get them out.
Yeah, I'll clarify that a little bit. No, we don't have an outdoor tool storage area. I wish we did, but due to security and vandalism, we were supposed to keep all of our tools inside, which makes sense. So when I'm working and talking with patients about tool storage, I meant that as when they return home, how can we figure out tool storage in their own home environment to decrease the amount of transitions from their tool storage to where they're gardening. So less about on campus, and really strategizing and problem solving ways to set up their environment in their own home. So kind of those home modifications. Does that answer your question, Susan?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry, I didn't
Yes.
clarify that very well.
Is it a long trek from where the tools are stored indoors to the outdoor space?
It's not too bad. No,
Okay.
no. I have a little red wagon. It's all good.
Nice. Julie says, thanks. Love the wax pen. That is a really useful tool. Does the basil seed go off the wax, the wax pretty easily?
Yeah, so it doesn't take much effort at all. You can just sort of, once it's on there, you can just kind of tap the soil. So I might have them, I mean, basil seeds are so small, you don't have to poke holes, but we might pre-poke the holes using just like a pencil tip, depending on the depth. And then they'll put the wax tip pen on, and then they can just kind of, almost like they just brush the soil with it and the seed just drops off. It's not
Nice.
perfect by any means. The wax occasionally will fall off, but I found it's been really beneficial, and the delight that people are like, I can plant seeds again. So it's cool.
Yeah, but that's a game changer with the tiny seeds, especially I use a lot of basil seeds in my activities. And so that's really helpful.
But, and for all of us too, right? Like, they're so small.
Right. I have a greenhouse grower friend who sowing begonia seeds, apparently they can be the size of dust, even smaller than basil seeds. So that's interesting. Okay. I don't think we have any further questions. One more question just popped up. Thank you. I see on your hospital website that your therapeutic recreation programs offer many kinds of modalities, but how many CTRS work there, and each CTRS is assigned to certain modalities?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a huge recreation department, the largest I've ever worked in any organization. I'm typically by myself. We have 23, I think, recreational therapists on staff here. And some are dedicated to inpatient services, and some are dedicated to outpatient services. And then that gets broken up and specialized into either brain injury or spinal cord injury. We have 2 other recreational therapists on staff that specialize in a certain modality other than myself. The rest of them are more generalists, I guess you could say. So their specialty is just brain injury or spinal cord injury. So we do have an equipment specialist that helps maintain and organize and helps educate patients about different equipment, and also helps run our adventure programs. And then our other specialist, she is for our teen population. So she specializes in all the teen programming from the recreation standpoint, but the rest of our team are generalists and they do everything. So whether it's, outdoor rec to crafts to, whatever the patient's interests were. We do have a music therapist on staff. She's housed with our speech department and mostly for brain injury. So it's kind of that music and the neuro, which has been really great. And we do have a pretty large animal assisted intervention program here that 2 of our recreation therapists, the generalists, kind of oversee. It could be a full-time job, I wish it was, but it takes up a lot of their time, but they help coordinate that, whether it's for treatment sessions or for pet visits in the evening for well-being.
That is pretty amazing. I'm sure there's a lot of collaboration across the board there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That is really interesting to learn about. Okay, we've got a lot of thank yous, and I see that we are right on time here. So Erin, thank you so much for presenting about your important work at Craig and sharing your talents with us today. I appreciate everybody for joining our webinar today, and stay tuned for further information about whether or not this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, but also that we will be sharing the YouTube video that Erin had to show during her presentation today. So thanks again, everybody, for joining. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.